Day one, Bucks minicamp. Oh boy, what an interesting day. We started out in the indoor facility because I don't know if you know this or not, but we're kind of getting a lot of rain now.
We are hitting that time of year.
Woo! Some big boomers were popping up around in the morning, and we had one kind of settle over one Buck place for a bit. So they began in the indoor facility where they do a lot of the special teams and sort of the warm-ups and things like that. You always take role in these things, and we knew Hassan Reddick would be there, and he was. I did later in the afternoon see Chris Godwin on the football field, not practicing, but standing there watching practice. Looked like he was walking okay back to the training area and whatnot. But there were some things that were kind of concerning, maybe. Like, for example, seeing Tristan Wirfs with a big knee brace on his right leg, which is the one that he injured during the season last year and amazingly only missed one game with a sprained MCL. And the thing that's going on right now, because it's the off season and there's no injury report or they're not required to say anything. And quite frankly, might be violating a few HIPAA laws if they did. We're not getting any information on any injuries right now. If a guy's not out there practicing, it's because Bulls will say, he's got some stuff going on. We're just, he'll be fine by training camp. And that's kind of what he said about Wirfs. Is I think, but when I see something like that, unless there was something that was sustained during practice that we're not there for every practice, we're only there one out of every 3 or 4 OTAs, and it's possible, right? Even though they're on grass and they're not in pads, guys do get bent up sometimes. But especially when you have something on a knee that was injured a year ago, it just makes me wonder, like, did something flare up? Was there some procedure that needed to be done? So that was one of the things that kind of caught my eye, and there were probably a few players like that were out there. And a few that weren't working. We did see Chris Godwin, like I mentioned, Reddick for sure.
It was good to see Reddick out there. I mean, Godwin you knew wasn't going to practice.
Right.
And would Hassan Reddick be there? We knew he was in the building.
Mm-hmm.
To see him on the field, looked fit.
He did some stuff.
We saw
too.
some videos. Oh yeah,
he was fast. He would have gotten a couple sacks. Now they had I think it was Andy. I think Heck was playing left tackle with Wirfs out, and he smoked him at least once or twice, which isn't good for your swing tackle necessarily. But listen, Reddick is in great shape. He is motivated. It's interesting. Like, we're just looking at him, because I'm used to seeing Yaya Diaby, who's a big human being, and Reddick's a big guy too, but not in the sense that he's more linear. He's more thinned out maybe than some of those other guys, but he's fast, and that's what they need him to do. So if they can get that sort of motor from him, throughout an entire game, if he comes back and even is a 10 sack guy, right, somebody that the other offense has to roll protection to, that's going to make Diaby better. That's going to make Vita Vea better. That's going to make Kalijah Cansey better. And they're going to have a much better pass rush with Logan Hall and all those guys if you have what a lot of teams have, and really the best teams have, which is just one game wrecker. A game wrecker that somebody has to account for on every play, has to slide protection to every play. And so, that's going to be key. I'll tell you, I continue to say this, and when I watch them on the grass, it just confirms it every single day. What was a weakness for them last year, which I think was their secondary, in particular the corners. Zion McCallum had a pretty good year, but we know Jamel Dean, missed a bunch of games again. He's missed 9 games in 2 years. He's had just 1 interception since 2022. Listen, the corners that they drafted are an upgrade. They're going to help them now. Does it mean that Dean will lose his job necessarily week 1? No, but here's what it does mean. He's not going to miss any practices anymore if he can possibly get out there, and he is going to be pushed to keep his stuff, right? And that's what the good teams do. You have competition at every position. You have the guys that are hungry to take over and be starters. And I'm just telling you, man, Benjamin Morrison, dude can play, and Jacob Parrish, keeps continuing to get his hands on ball. Now right now, if they lined up tomorrow, Parrish I think would be their nickel corner, but he's not just a nickel corner. He can play outside as well, even though he's not very tall. But I have not watched a practice where those two guys having either intercepted a pass or knocked down balls and had tight coverage. And we're going against it's good on good. It's against not Godwin. It's against Mike Evans. It's against Jalen McMillan. You know, and so they are they're a different defense if you can have pressure on the quarterback. The quarterback has to get the ball out of his hand a little quicker, and you have tighter coverage on the outside, right? I mean, these days, and I forget who was talking about this today, but I agreed with him. These days, it's almost hard to pay um, a bunch of guys in the secondary. You're paying Winfield at the time when he signed last year. He was the highest paid defensive back. Forget about safety when he re-signed his new deal. But it's hard to pay a lot of guys on defense because it's a scoring league, and if you are going to pay them, these teams spread you out, right? And so you got 4 and 5 eligibles on every play. You can't really hold them at the line of scrimmage. You have to let them go after 5 yards. You can't hit them in certain areas. And even though it's important to have coverage, it's tough. It's tough to spend a lot of resources on that side of the ball because the quarterback has so many options. Like if I got a lockdown corner, that's awesome, right? That's really great. But guess what? He can only cover one guy. Okay. And I'm not minimizing that. If you can take out their best receiver, then that gives me a big advantage. But if you've got 4 or 5 guys back there that can all play, and there's no good matchup, if you've got Winfield and Tyke Smith ends up making a great transition to safety, and you got Jacob Parrish in the slot, and you've got Morrison coming in there and either starting or spelling Jamel Dean or Zion McCallum. Now all of a sudden you've got something right now. You've got depth if there's injuries. We haven't even talked about Christian Izien, who's going to factor in here somewhere. Izien was a starter pretty much all year when he wasn't injured, and now he's going to have a tough time getting on the field unless there's an injury. So they're so much better in the secondary that, and again, 2 of these guys are rookies, right? They're not going to be perfect coming out of college, but I'm here to tell you they have a chance to get much better on defense, and it shows. It shows out there because these guys are going against Mike Evans. Mike Evans was there today. Jalen McMillan was there today. Emeka Abuka was there today, and that's who they were defending and doing it with a lot of success. Okay, I'd say we had a number of interviews after practice, and I don't know why they do this. They kept us outside. I know it's maybe to get the guys coming off the field, but it's not that quick. I mean, we got Bowles, and then there's a little break, and then here comes Baker, and then Rashad White, and
No, they keep you outside so that you guys won't ask as many questions because you're hot and want to go in.
bro, I'm telling you, that big, beautiful air conditioned media room that they have 4 feet away. That's like literally they put the banner in front of the door where you go to that room. I don't get it. Listen, and I'm not any good with sun anymore. I never was because I'm part Irish, but man, and it wasn't. It was a nice day, and it was cloudy, and it was fine for a while, and then the sun came out. And you talk about a clam bake. I cannot imagine, and this is true. The feels like temperature was 98, I think, at the time we were talking, and I felt like it was 105. But when we get to August, whoo, baby! I mean, I can't even begin to think. But anyway, we were out there and we did get to talk to Baker Mayfield, and really we hadn't had an extended conversation with him pretty much all off season. They kind of held him back a little bit for the mini camp, and of course he's going through learning the sort of the new coordinator and um, Josh Grizzard and that sort of thing. I think Grizzard had the best description of Baker the other day when he said that he plays the game like a UFC fighter. I thought that was perfect. It's just all elbows and and kneecaps and stuff like that. but that's kind of how he'll fight you. You know, that's kind of how he plays.
Yeah, it's
And
not a bad description at all.
it's pretty good. And then Mayfield retorted to that because he's constantly being told, you know, you got to protect yourself and you can't take hits and all that. Um, and he just kind of swats all that away, right? And he goes, coaches like to talk this time of year. He goes, sit down and watch tape. And they're like, he was reminded, well, they're just trying to, you know, trying to protect you. And he goes, yeah, they are. And I'm trying to win games. He says it's football. There's a time and place. On third downs, you can have situations where I'm going to try to do everything I can to get a first down or whatever we need. But there's also a time and place to throw it away. So when it comes to protecting myself, I think the biggest thing is the sack numbers. You know, a lot of that was from holding the ball. There's give and take, the scramble element, trying to create plays, but also situations like where are you at? Are you leading? You know, don't force the ball, trust the defense, all that. I'm here to tell you, you're not going to change Baker. You're just not. You're just going to have to hold your breath, close your eyes, and say, this guy is going to play this way. Maybe you can convince him, you know, if it's third down, just to punt the ball and throw it away. Like I literally heard Grizzard the other day at one of the OTAs scream at the top of his lung. Baker did one of these things where he, you know, reverse field and was rolling out, and Grizzard screamed, "Throw it away!" and so finally Baker tossed it out of bounds. But like they're on him, and they were on him last year, and it didn't do a whole lot of good. But it's just the way he plays. It's how he's always played. He fights you, you know, like a UFC fighter, and he's going to do that now. You know, if you get better at protection, if I think the fact that there's continuity in this offensive system, if not the play caller, you still have the same system, same terminology. All those things will help the offense and help Baker have cleaner looks and you know be able to execute a little faster. And if they can do that, then maybe you're not, you know, chased as much out of the pocket or whatnot. But that's just kind of the way he is. He's been successful doing it that way. He's going to fight you, and at some point, yeah, it will catch up to him. And if it does, you're screwed, like any other team that loses its starting quarterback. But he understands that, you know, the other side of this is that he's got an embarrassment of riches, I think, at the receiver position. Um, and having said that, like having seen, you know, Chris Godwin walking around out there, no sense of where he's at, like physically. But more and more, and just talking to people, I got a strong sense, being out there the first day, that I don't see much of a scenario where they will say, Chris, you're starting week one, you know, at Atlanta. I now you can't convince Chris of that, and neither will they try to. You know, he's motivated like anybody else to be there for his teammates and start week one, opening day in Atlanta. But because they have Abuka, because that guy, according to Mayfield, um, is one of the best rookies he's seen, because he says he can literally play any position at receiver right now. He says he's that detailed, he's that precise. This is a special player, and I'm gonna keep saying it until he proves me wrong. That he can step in, and he is playing slot right now, which is Chris's spot. I just think while it wasn't maybe the reason they drafted him, it had to be at least in the back of their minds that, you know, look what happened last year, man. I mean, you know, we lost Mike really 4 weeks, but 3 weeks he didn't play at all. 4 weeks essentially after he got hurt. We didn't have Chris after the Ravens game, you know, and they struggled like crazy to move the ball, you know, and they lost 7 points a game. They lost all 4 games, and so, you know, when you bring McMillan back, to have McMillan with the finish that he had last year with the 7 touchdowns in the final 5 games. Now you add, you know, a guy like Abuka, and you got a healthy Mike Evans to start the year. There's just no reason to rush Godwin. And the other part of it is he's not just signed for this year; he's signed for 2 years. You know, he's this year and next year. Now, last year I don't think of his contract is guaranteed, but I also don't believe that the Bucs um, would have, you know, told Godwin that we're not going to let you play all 3 seasons after he's gone through what he's gone through injury wise. In other words, you'd have to be kind of in it for the 3 years to see what you can get on the other side of this injury. Because remember, after he got hurt with the 3 torn knee ligaments, that next year was okay. They moved him outside, which I think was a hindrance, but he wasn't himself. Now, last year, starts out 50 receptions, leading the NFL, 5 touchdowns, and then he gets hurt again. So if you don't get the 100% Chris Godwin all this year, he's going to be closer to it a year from now, assuming he doesn't, get hurt or suffer some other injury. So I think that they're pretty committed to him. It's been explained to me, is like, look, we're not just, we're not just worried about Godwin this season. We got him next year too. So we're looking at it as a 2-year thing, and we don't want to rush him back and have any setbacks at all. So again, haven't seen him run, haven't seen him do anything, don't know what he's capable of just yet. And I know that Godwin will be pushing to play, but I just don't see any reason why he would, unless there's other injuries between now and when you start the season. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. I also think that no decisions have been made.
I agree with that. I agree with that. That's fair.
I think the Bucs know that, if I'm guessing, it's doubtful he's ready for week 1.
Yeah.
Or definitely not 100%.
Right.
But they're not ruling anything out. There's no need. It's June 11th. There's no need to make that decision today.
Yeah.
There's no need to make that decision next month or even when camp opens in late July.
No, that's true.
You don't need to make that decision. You're fully prepared for whatever the scenario is.
Right.
Whether he's available to play some, is he 50%, 70, 80, 100? They're preparing for all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more it sounds like and the more it looks, it's probably unlikely he's ready, but they're not ready to make that decision yet, and they don't have to. So you don't need to. You prepare for the different scenarios. Godwin in the lineup, limited, can play full game, out of the lineup, and then you're adjusting with, okay, is it Ibuka? Is it McMillan? How are we doing that? But there's no need to make that decision today. So anybody tells you he's going to play week 1 or not, that decision's not made yet. I mean, they may have a pretty good idea of what the answer is because they're in there in the rehab. They've seen the medical, all that stuff, but they're not ready to make that decision. And I'm sure Chris isn't either. I mean, we know the way that Chris plays, he's pushing to be, I'm back for week 1. Whether I play in the preseason, who cares? I want to be ready for week 1, period. Whether he can get there, whether it makes sense for the organization, whether it's better to hold him out a couple weeks or whatever, because he's not 100%, you've got enough receivers, that decision will be made at that time, not now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. They'll give him every chance to make it back, and if he does, great. It would be gravy. But assuming nothing happens to the other receivers, like I said, you may need them. But I do believe that they have the luxury that they haven't had in the past, which is you now have added another really good talent. And I'm telling you, I will be surprised. I will be surprised if we're not at least discussing Ibuka as one of the top rookies in the league this year. I will be. I will be, just to hear. It's one thing just kind of like your eyes tell you one thing, right? And you're like, well, what am I seeing here? They're on grass. They're in shorts. This is really, what is this? But then when you hear Baker Mayfield talk about him and just how sharp he is, he was just going on about it. And like, rookies typically have a learning curve. The pro football is not college football. I mean, understand that when they call plays in college football, they don't even have a snap count. They clap their hands to snap the ball. They look to the sideline, and I mean everybody, to get the signal and the audible and the call. There's no huddle. There's, it's all done by the coaches. And yet this guy is able to grasp this playbook and be able, according to Baker, he said he could start, when we say receiver, well, the guy plays receiver, but there's really 4 positions out there, right, that you can play. And they each have a letter and all that stuff, X, Y, F, all that Z. But this guy is literally capable of playing all 4. And to be able to do that, you have to go deep into your playbook, especially as a rookie. And Baker said he could go out and play any of the positions right now and play it well. So that's how much confidence they have. He's a good route runner. He presents himself well to the quarterback. He's easy to read. That's important for a quarterback, to be able to kind of read your body language and know where you're going to stem the route and know you're going to be quarterbacks in the NFL don't, they don't wait, see guy open, throw guy, throw ball to guy. That's college football. In the NFL, the receiver has to be at his landmark at the right time. They're throwing, to the second hash, across the 35, 37-yard line. Like, they're throwing to a spot. They're going to throw the guy open, because open in the NFL might be half an arm length. It's a very smaller, tighter window. And so guys that run these routes have to be so precise and at the right spot at the right time. And that's hard to learn. It's hard to build that trust between the quarterback. And I think Baker's is quickly kind of done that with him. So I'm going to continue to bang the drum for him. But and he looked good. He looked good today or yesterday when we were out there the first day of mandatory minicamp. We had a chance to talk to Rachaad White as well. The first thing you'll notice about Rachaad White when you see him, the guy has lost some significant weight, and I don't mean in a bad way, but like, he is trimmed up, right? And we asked him, like, what do you weigh right now? And he was like, well, last year he told us that, what was it? He said, I played at 220, and right now he's 212, and he looks it, right? And you say, well, 8 pounds, but 8 pounds is a lot. It's a lot for a guy that's 6 foot tall. And he hasn't, he's still strong, still able to, they're like, well, what about, how's that going to help you in pass protection? Like, that's a mentality. That's not really so much in terms of weight or something like that. But he looks leaner, and he seems to be as quick as he's ever been. And look, he's lost his starting job, and he acknowledged that it's pretty much the same role he had at the end of last year. Bucky Irving is RB1. He's RB1A or RB2, depending on the formation. They will play together in the backfield many times, like they did a year ago. And his forte is catching the football. It's making guys miss in space. It's pass protection, right? He can still run it, but he's a career 3.8 guy. And Bucky has shown that he can be Barry Bonds sometimes. He can hit the home run, and he looks quick. He had some moves today and broke some ankles, and good inside runner, and Bucky's looking good. So the other thing about Rachaad was, we asked him about the post that he had several weeks ago where he posted last ride. And he's going to be a free agent after this year. Lost his starting job, right? Not the starter anymore. And so under that sort of backdrop, with Sean Tucker expected to play a little bit more and whatnot, you're like, okay, what's he saying here? He's saying, I'm out no matter what. I'm not going to accept my role. Like, what is the mindset here that would, kind of prompt you to post last ride? Well, his response was, no, man, I was just vibing to country music. I love it.
Anyone ask him which artist?
Maybe he's listening to Beyonce's latest. I don't know. I tend to think that wasn't the case, but far be it from me to get inside of his head. The weird thing is, it was out there for several weeks. I wrote a story about it, and it was never corrected. He didn't come in the next OTAs and address it. And so, when he did finally get the chance, I guess you got to take him at his word, but I'm not sure exactly what country music he was vibing to that would cause you to write, sort of like, Last Dance or whatever he said.
Last ride.
Let's ride. Not let's ride. Not like my boy Russell Wilson. Let's ride. It was last ride. So anywho, those guys, genuinely, Bucky, Rachaad, Tucker, all those guys get along very well. They do compete very hard against each other. There's no animus at all between them. Everybody wants to play, obviously, and yet I think there's a recognition that it's going to take all of them in the course of a season. There's not many bell cows. You don't have many Derrick Henrys or Saquon Barkleys out there. Those guys are rare, so they're going to need them all. And so,
but I would expect this is his last ride, as
I think so.
Look, he was a starter. He's now
Mm-hmm.
been replaced. He wants to be a starter again.
Right.
He'll be a free agent after this year. Of course, he's going to explore being a starter somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, you can't blame him or fault him. That doesn't mean he absolutely will not be back, but
Right.
I think he goes and sees what's out there. And with Bucky, your starter now, the Bucs aren't going to want to pay him big bucks.
No, they won't. And they're going to bring along, I think, Sean Tucker, who will be going into his third year, I think, by the time Rashad leaves, and they got I believe the new running back from LSU, Josh Williams, looks really good. So they have a number of good running backs. I mean, it's a good room, and weirdly, like Rashad is now he's the senior guy. He's not been in this position of leading the room, and yet when you get to your fourth year, it goes by fast, man. I'm telling you. You look up, and these guys were just drafted, and the next thing you know, they're going for free agent contracts. It's just, the NFL career, the average career being about 4 years or less. You're such a young guy. You're a kid, basically. You come out of college at 22, 23 years old. Now it's a little longer. Some guys stay in, but for the most part, by the time you play 4 years, you're still only, 27, 28. And that's still really young. But, in football years, you don't know how many more years you have to play. And if you run a lot of mileage in that time and you get to be closer to 30, it's hard to give guys contracts at that position because it's such a, you know, tough position to play. You're getting hit 5, 6, 7 times sometimes every time you carry the football. So, we'll see. I mean, I like I said, I like Rashad. He's extremely good in the flat, as a receiver. I think he can still get better at that. I think he can certainly run the ball better. And if being lighter makes him quicker to the hole, and he does some things in the run game that he hasn't done, then that'll keep him on the field more. But at any rate, that's sort of what he told us. Kind of for what it's worth, is that he was just vibing to country music, man, which I don't know. I take it as a word, I suppose. Hey, I want to get into some interesting GM rankings here in just a minute. But first, go see our friends at Breitling Boutique, man, at International Plaza Mall. They've been a great sponsor of ours now for quite some time. And you're going to enjoy this store. It's upstairs on the second floor. You go to the center of the mall. You're going to see a terrific customer service. Go in there. They're going to pour you a drink. Spend some time. The Breitling Company has been in business for over 140 years. They've been making the best Swiss watches anywhere in the world, and you're going to come out of there with a timepiece that you can be proud of, that's going to fit your needs, whether it's the chronomats or the Navitimers that they have for men, and then also women's watches for your wife, for your girlfriend. These are sports watches primarily, very durable, absolutely beautiful, and a whole array of different colored wristbands for her to enjoy. And they've been having a special celebration of the NFL's 104th year anniversary with the 32 team watches. Now, this is while supplies last. Can't tell you which ones still have watches, but they're absolutely fantastic. These team watches have the obviously the color scheme of the team. For the Buccaneers, it's the red. They have the logos inside these beautiful chronomat watches. They are gorgeous. Go to tampay.com. You're likely to see an ad with Breitling Boutique with the Buccaneers team watches. Again, while supplies last, but there's so much inventory, and you're going to learn so much about their product and kind of suit that perfect timepiece for you. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Please, when you go there, let them know you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. So the other day, Steve, that we did the rankings of the quarterbacks that Chris Sims had, but then somebody else sort of, I think they ranked, was it the GMs?
Yeah, RotoPat for NBC Sports for the last 3 years now has ranked the general managers. And so this year's rankings are out. And where do you think Jason Licht may have finished?
Wow, it's a great question. I'm gonna say, because they've won the Super Bowl and they've been to a couple and won a couple, that Howie Roseman's number one.
That is correct. Yes, you are correct.
Now, the interesting thing, if you know the backstory, and I've written about it before in the Tampa Bay Times, that Howie Roseman and Jason Licht worked together for years in Philadelphia, and they had different strengths. They had the same sort of job or level of job there in Philadelphia, and Jason was stronger on the personnel side. Howie was stronger, sort of on the I guess you say salary cap angle part of it, but they learn from each other. And Howie, we know, has done a great job building that Philadelphia Eagles team. And I think he's won Executive of the Year for whatever reason. Jason hasn't won one yet, but um, they've done a really good job, and that makes sense that he'd be number one because they are the reigning Super Bowl champions. After that, maybe Veach at Kansas City is probably up there somewhere.
Andy Reid and Veach, number 2, yes.
Yeah. I would think that the Rams GM is probably in the top 5.
McVay and Snead are number 3.
Les Snead, yeah. Wow, I'm getting them in order. Boy, gets tougher after that because I'm trying to think of Super Bowl teams. I mean, look, Baltimore's done a good job. I'm not sure who their GM is at this point.
Eric DeCosta's number 4.
You see 4? Wow. Picking them off there, Rick. Cincinnati, no. How about Detroit?
Brad Holmes is number 6.
Okay, skip one there. Brad Holmes is 6. Minnesota?
Minnesota is, I believe, 13th.
13th. Okay. Yep. I'm going to say that Jason Licht, and if he's not in the top 10, it's a travesty. I'm going to say Jason Licht is number 10.
That is correct.
Okay, wow.
Now, he was 12 a year ago and 16 2 years ago.
So he's moving up. He's been steadily climbing the charts.
Now, the other ones in front of him,
the
Packers.
Gunkhurst or whatever his name is, yeah.
We got Holmes at 6. Number 7's Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch.
Okay, yeah, okay. I mean, talent procurement, they've had that. They haven't translated it into a Super Bowl yet. They've been to a couple. They've lost a lot of those players. I think they've missed on a few of late, but all right, I guess. I mean, look, when you're playing in Super Bowls, right, that's what people are going to be looking for. A team that's in the Super Bowl. The Bucs, for all that they've done lately, and they did win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady, obviously, in 2020, and they've been to 5 straight playoffs. But aside from the Super Bowl, championship, Super Bowl 55, they haven't really advanced beyond just one round. In fact, they've been eliminated a couple times in the first round. So, I think Jason, he's one of the longest tenured GMs. His first 6 years certainly had some hits. I mean, his first pick ever was Mike Evans, but he's also had some misses, and they did not make the playoffs for the first 6 years, and he kept his job. The Glazers stuck with him, let him grow into it, and then of course since then he's as good, I think, as anybody in the NFL. I think their last 3 drafts have been stellar. And the 2020 class included guys like Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. So you might have had, 2 potential Hall of Fame talents right there. But 10. I mean, he has to be at least in the top 10.
Yep,
has to be.
Well, the other ones in front of him, McDermott and Brandon Beane in Buffalo.
Okay, although here again, like, take Josh Allen out of it. They've tried a lot of different receivers, Stephon Diggs and different ones. Defensively, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I look at the Bills, and I just see a team that's so driven by its quarterback that I don't know that they've done a great job of building around him. But okay.
Yep. And then number 9 is John Schneider of the Seahawks.
I like John Schneider a lot. Now, John Schneider was at the top of his game, obviously, when Pete Carroll and them were going to Super Bowls. But now he's completely, sort of revamped that franchise, and now he's, he found Geno Smith. They won with Geno Smith a little bit, didn't win big enough. Geno goes on to the Raiders, I think, and now they have a new quarterback in Sam Darnold. So we'll see how that goes. But he is very, very good. One time I got stranded. I think it was at the Super Bowl, when the Super Bowl was in New York. And I don't know that Seattle was in that game, but that be as it may, somehow I ran into his sister at the airport. I was there 16 hours. It was the biggest damn snowstorm you ever saw started happening right after that game. You know, it was a New York Super Bowl, and everybody's like, oh, man, they're crazy to play it up here. And the weather couldn't have been better until the game was over. And it snowed like 16 inches in 3 days. And so we were all stranded at, I think I was at LaGuardia or somewhere. And I ran into his sister, and we started talking about him. And she goes, hey, you know, John was one of these guys from the time he was a kid, like with just all the football cards, you know, and looking at the back of the cards, and I said, really? Because that's almost like cliche, right? Like, you know, you're that guy, you're the football card guy. That's who he was. That's who he was, man. They said we used to make fun of him. He was such a nerd and this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, look at him now. But I like him a lot. I think he does a really good job.
You want to guess the bottom few GMs? And note, there's 4 new GMs that have brand new that don't get rated, like John Spytek.
Yeah, John couldn't be ranked yet.
Yeah, there's 28 GMs in total they ranked, because those 4 haven't done anything yet.
Bottom 4, okay. I would say Cleveland has to be there.
No, actually, really? 22. Andrew Berry's 22.
Andrew Berry's 22
out of 28.
Okay, who's really wretched? Well, Kayam is gone, so I don't know who's running Arizona now.
That's a new hire. That's one of the new hires.
Is that a bottom one, or is that just not count?
No, actually, who is running?
It used to be
Cardinals. Ossenfort. He's 20th.
Ossenfort is 20th. Wow. Huh. That's interesting. You got me now.
The last one's the Giants. I mean, you lose Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, that was a
Danny
bad deal.
Dimes.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes a hell of a lot of sense, actually.
Dan Morgan of the Panthers next to last.
Dan Morgan, who, you know, is only in his second year, so it's, you know, kind of hard to say. But I mean, I guess if you beat them up for, although Dan did not take Bryce Young. Bryce Young was already there when Dan got the job. They brought in Dave Canales. Dan Morgan did to help Bryce. So I don't know that he gets the blame there, but you know, they haven't been on the job long enough to prove it one way or the other. So I could see that.
Elliott Wolf of the Patriots in 26th.
That makes sense to me.
And Chris Ballard of the Colts, 25th.
Yeah, and Ballard was a hot commodity because he came, I think, from the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken, and he was considered one of the brighter guys, and then he wasn't. And it's funny, the teams you mentioned there, they have unproven quarterbacks or no quarterbacks at all. You know what I mean? Like, Anthony Richardson.
Look, it's a quarterback league. Like, if you don't have a quarterback,
you're going to be at the bottom of every ranking. You know, and that's, quite frankly, that's why Jason Licht is being elevated himself, because when you bring in a Tom Brady, when you bring in a Baker Mayfield and it works in both instances, then now you look like a genius. But
when he was able to bring in Brady because he had a roster that was good.
That's true. He gets credit for that.
Yeah, he absolutely does, because that's why Brady came here. I mean, Jameis Winston wasn't good enough to take that team to the next level.
Yep.
Tom Brady recognized the talent on the roster.
Yep.
And you know, a lot of other reasons, and said that's where I'm going. I mean, Bruce Arians being the coach was part of it. I mean, there was a lot of reasons.
No, but I think you're right. I think the biggest reason was they had talent, and he knew it. And Tom looked around and said, "Who can I take right now, and have a chance to win a Super Bowl?" And he chose the Bucs.
Yep.
He looked, I think, at the time, I want to say he looked at the Chargers or the Rams, maybe one of those teams. I'm not sure which. Although the Rams,
I think the Raiders were after him. I mean,
yeah. So I don't know exactly how many options he had. Probably more than we realized. But
the Bears, he said,
the Bears were one. Yeah, he did admit to that. You're right.
By the way, Terry Fontenot of the Falcons, 24th. Mickey Loomis of the Saints, 21st.
Yeah, Loomis has had that job for a long time, but it's funny how you don't look like you're as good of a GM when you lose to Sean Payton. That's the other part of the GM equation. It's like coach quarterback league, man. It's a coach quarterback league. But it's great if you're buying the groceries and you do a good job with that. But really hard otherwise. Losing Sean Payton probably didn't make him smarter. That's just the way it kind of goes. So,
and then Jerry and Stephen Jones, 16th.
I really believe we're just a couple players away from going in the Super Bowl for the first time in 31 years. You believe it's been that long since they've been to a Super Bowl?
You realize Tom Brady and the Cowboys have been to the same number of NFC Championship games in the last 31 years, and Brady only played in the league 3 years, or
I love it in
that
the
conference.
NFC. Yeah, I love that stat. It's phenomenal. That's so good. Yeah, but guess what? We'll have them jammed down our throat, not one, but every holiday this year. They're playing, and I'm not making this up, they're playing on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and I believe New Year's, if I'm not mistaken.
They are America's team. I mean, come on now.
Oh, America's team. We're America's team. I really think we're America's. They just let me know. Yeah, they are. And they're also ESPN's team, and they're also Fox's team.
Fox's and NBC's and Prime team. And anybody.
You know what I would say to that at this point? Because, and I don't know where this whole America's team, they did videos on this stuff. I know how it got started, and the star and
Staubach,
the hole in the roof, so God could watch, and Staubach,
Landry.
really Roger Staubach, Landry, the guy from Navy that like I get that, but like that was in the 70s, 80s, right? And they won the 3 Super Bowls. But in the last 30 years, with the advent of streaming, and now we're playing on Monday, Sunday, Thursday, et cetera, it's not like, when it was the Cowboys was the national game at 4:00 every Sunday, and that was that, or Monday night with Dandy Don, I'm here, Howard Cosell, and you turn on Thanksgiving Day, and it would be Pat Summerall. He's at the 30, the 40, Emmitt Smith touchdown. It's not those Dallas Cowboys anymore. And so what I'm wondering is, haven't the Kansas City Chiefs become America's team in the middle of the heartland? In the Super Bowl, it seems, every year for the last
but the Chiefs are on every. I mean, they were on Christmas this year. They play all the time.
That's what I mean. Like, I think they've supplanted the in my mind. And let's be honest, with America's sweetheart Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, the Chiefs are definitely the number one draw in the NFL right now as far as television ratings.
That's what I believe.
But the Cowboys aren't far behind, which is why they're always on as many max.
That's what the ratings say, but in my mind, I think the Chiefs are America's team.
Oh, I don't disagree with you, but the Cowboys still get great. The Steelers still get great ratings, and they will always be on primetime games. And I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, Packers do well, probably.
We talked about this a while back. You talk about how the NFL tells you who they like based on bye weeks. The networks tell you who they like based on primetime games.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. No, there's no question.
There's a reason I think the Titans, the Colts aren't getting any primetime games this year. Maybe even the Jaguars. Like, there's a reason.
Well, the Titans suck, so there's that. But like,
I
the
think
Jaguars,
those are 3 teams that
the
aren't.
Small markets. Yep. The small markets are the thing. I mean, I've had the conversations with the people at the Worldwide Leader, and about jobs, about blogging, about this, that, and the other, and they will tell you, and when it comes to Tampa Bay, it doesn't matter what they do. We just don't get any traffic. We don't.
Except when Tom Brady was here for 3 years, you did.
Well, yeah. I mean,
and they were on primetime, and the networks were here, and
my good friend Dan Patrick called me every
you were
week.
On shows all the time. Patrick and
my good friend Rich Eisen called me every day.
Now you reach out to them, they're like, new phone, who's this?
It's all right, who dis? I get the who dis line. It's so true, man. I'm so disappointed. It would be funny, and Dan is always good about it. When the few times I've been on since, he's like, "Well, Rick, we used to talk to you all the time. I kind of feel bad, calling you now, but if Baker Mayfield and his group were to become relevant to the point where they were the number 1 seed in the NFC or the number 2 seed, and they get into the postseason and they win a couple games and they're playing the championship, oh boy, the phone will start ringing again. That's the way it works. It's just the way it works, especially here in Tampa Bay. You gotta win to be relevant down here, because it's a land where the networks forget very often. But the networks love the Bucs. They're on 4 times this year on national TV. The NFL loves them. They gave them one of the most favorable bye weeks in the league. I think it's maybe one of the latest bye weeks as well, like week 11, week 10, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think there's some 13. I think it goes up to 13 or 14. But
Yeah, so it's one of the later ones, but it's
Yep.
it's favorable because it's kind of split in the middle of the season, so they like them, which is good. Finally, the Tampa Bay Rays had a tough one. They lost, I think, 3-1. Ryan Pepio pitched pretty well. They had tough time getting some runs home. At one point, I think they were going into the 7th or 8th inning. They only had 3 hits.
Yep, they only did that. I mean, Morel hit a bomb to center field, but in that deepest part at Fenway.
Yeah, it was huge.
10 feet to the left or right is probably a home run, but hit it to the bad part.
You got to hit it over the monster, wicked far.
Yeah. So that's why it's crucial that they won the 11-inning game the night before. So now the series is, 1-1. You got the rubber match tonight.
Yeah. Still playing well, still pitching well, but the occasional, don't get the big hit at the right time or many hits. It's weird. They've been on fire as far as swinging the bats go, home runs in particular. But yeah, just had a well-pitched game against them and see if they can bounce back and stay relevant and try to stay in this race and win some games. But yeah, it's been going well. I'll be back at $1 for day 2 of the mandatory minicamp. I think this might be a little shorter practice. They're starting at 9:15. My guess is it doesn't go past 10:30, maybe even sooner than that. And then on Thursday, even though it's scheduled for about an hour and a half, I expect it to be a jailbreak after about a half hour. The last day of mandatory minicamp is sort of like the last day of school, where
half days and really not. I mean,
it's a half day.
You don't even bring your backpack. You don't bring anything.
Don't bring your backpack. You can wear pajamas. Like, they don't even care, right? Like, it's like the teachers, they're not teaching anything. They're going to watch a movie. You're going to see Moana, something like that. And then, I'm serious, man. They did that in high school. They watched Moana like 3 times. But, and then everybody, as soon as that bell rings, it's like, for the summer. And there will be so many guys headed to the airport with their bags packed to get out of town. It won't even be funny. So it'll be a jailbreak on Thursday. And then we go on vacation, Steve. There won't be a podcast for about 7 weeks. No, we won't go on vacation, although we will go at some point. But it's going to be downtime in the NFL for a few weeks, and that's when the league goes on vacation. And I know quite a few that are planned. And then before you know it, man, 8 weeks from now, we'll be back at training camp. And then it's go time. It's go time, and it's football, and college football will be back soon. I'm looking forward to that. We don't have that long to wait. I think it's less than, I think I saw where there's like 89 days, 88 days, 87 days, somewhere in there before the season starts. So
we're less than 80 days to college football starting. So.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, before we get out of here, one more item. Aaron Rodgers is married? What? Wait, what? When did that happen?
Was he on ayahuasca when he did that, or what was going on? I mean,
he showed up with a ring on his left hand, and he confirmed, "I am married. Who's the lucky girl?" I hear, and I have to look this up. I don't want to start any rumors, but you should never just speculate, right, on something like that. And I haven't read the interweb, as the kids call it, but he was, I think, linked to an heiress of some kind. I don't know whose fortune it was, but there's a company. There's somebody whose daughter he was dating. At least I don't know if it's the same one he's proposed to. Remember, he didn't want to sign right away because he had many personal issues.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that included a wedding
and a honeymoon. I mean,
we just assumed it was something bad. It could have been something great, like I'm getting married, But yeah. So you know what, man? This could work. This could work because he's married. He's settling down. He's, got one more bite of the apple. He's going to Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin. He's not going to be the face of the franchise. He's just going to have to do your job. Now they got a bunch of defensive players, including TJ Watt, who's not going to come to mandatory minicamp because he wants a new deal. Problem with the Steelers, I heard Colin Cowherd talking about, I don't know, I disagree. Like, all the guys they pay are on defense. At some point, man, you're going to have to start paying some offensive guys. I mean, even Aaron's working pretty cheaply this time, but a tough division, Baltimore, right? Obviously you've got really good teams up and down that division, but I I think I'm rooting for the Steelers because I think the league is interesting if somebody like Rodgers wins games. Does that make sense? Like one more ride or last ride, whatever Rashad said. Maybe he can go all country western on us, but it just feels like it would be interesting if the Steelers could not only get in the playoffs, which they do every year, but maybe actually win a game or two. That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun. So we'll see what happens. Go see our friends at Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Check out the NFL 104th year anniversary watches, all 32 teams while supplies last. The Chronomats and Navitimers, women's watches, sports watches for your wife or girlfriend. It's Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Make sure you tell them that you heard about it right here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. For Steve Versnick, I am Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.